You ready to go? Who's here? Okay, it's the August 21st, 2017 special budget meeting. I'd like to call this meeting in order. Would you please rise with me and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, could we have the roll call, please?
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Cambenzi,
Here.
Commissioner Conley,
Here.
Commissioner Frazier,
Here.
Commissioner Plord,
Here.
Commissioner Reynolds,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Baldini,
Here.
and Mayor Campana.
Here. I do not have any announcements today. Public comments. We'll open the public comments. Anybody wish to address the commission? Seeing none, we're going to close public comments. We move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Commissioner Frazier,
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
is there a second? Commissioner Reynolds,
Second.
discussion none. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. We move to the new business, which is community services, parks and recreation, arts and culture, promotional, senior services, tourist park, marinas, and Lakeview Arena. City Manager, you going to start us off on this? Right to Gary Simpson.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Appreciate everybody showing up. For those of you listening at home, you can follow right along, see exactly what we're looking at. Just go to the city's web page, and on the front page, there's a link to the FY 2018 proposed budget. Just mash on the link, and it'll take you right there. Like I said, you'll see exactly what we're looking at. Tonight is the Community Services Night, so John, we appreciate John stepping up to the plate to present this budget. And before we get started, prior to the meeting, we did get the library budget, and I did hand that out. We'll actually go over this budget on August 30th, but I just wanted to go ahead and get that information out in case you wanted to look it over. And with that, we will hand it off to John. So take it away, John.
Very good. Thanks, Gary. I guess I'd like to start out by just thanking the mayor and the commissioners for this opportunity to present the 2018 community services budget. I think that it's an honor to do this, in part because we have such an outstanding staff of professionals within the department. I'm really proud of all the folks that we have on staff and their dedication to the city, their dedication to making things as efficient as possible, both operationally and financially. And I find, over the years that I've worked for the city of Marquette that the community services staff strive to find ways to be innovative, to reduce the general fund contributions, ways to be innovative to make the experience for the residents and for the visitors an extremely great experience. I think that we've shown over the years that we put forth responsible policies that lead to a budget that we're going to be looking at today. Over and over and over again, everybody that's in the field constantly bringing forward ideas on ways that we can make things smoother, make the marinas run better, make Lakeview cost less, make programs more effective. So I think that that those commitments by our staff really go a long ways toward putting together a budget that seems to constantly be getting better. So I think another big part of that, all three divisions, Parks and Recreation, Arts and Culture, and the Senior Center, we have a pretty good track record of going after seeking and obtaining grants. So helping in any way that we can to bring outside funding into the city of Marquette. So you'll see a bit of that tonight throughout all three divisions. So overall, very proud of all the staff that we have and the work that they do. And so it's an honor to present this budget. I think tonight I'll start with the fees. The first fee structure is page 20, the arts and culture fee structure. And this one's really simple. There's no change this year to this fee structure. So I don't think there's a whole lot that we need to discuss here. Same as last year. So if there are any questions on that, we'll move on to page 29. This is the Lakeview Arena fee structure. And we do have some changes here that I'd like to point out. The first change is to primetime ice. We're suggesting going up to $195 an hour for primetime ice for residents and $254 for non-residents. That is in keeping with our incremental increases year after year. It realizes a $10 increase for most of the users, but is still below what the Berry is more than likely going to charge. We don't have a great number for the Berry at this time, and they do have some sliding scales, some different scales for different user groups, but we feel that this is in keeping with our efforts to make Lakeview Arena whole. Also, with that non-prime ice, went up from $135 to $145, with the non-resident rate being comparable. For the first time since 2013, we've raised the public skating cost. Went from $250 to $3 for residents, $4 for non-residents. With that as well, there's a punch card category, so this just makes it easier if you're a frequent user of Lakeview. You can get a punch card and it makes it quicker at the door. And those are just carried out as a percentage. So those went up as well. The next thing that would be a change, we added a fee under summer drop-in program. So this is drop-in hockey. If you come and you want to play hockey in the afternoon, drop in. Whoever's there forms a team, plays. So we added a punch card for that, for those people that are in the arena often to do that, just to make their visit at the counter quicker. But it correlates to the fee for if you were to pay every time. The only other one that I'd like to mention is the office and storage space. So this fee we're proposing go up from $10 a square foot for office space to $12 a square foot, and for storage space from $5 a square foot up to $6 a square foot. Now I'd like to talk just a little bit about that. As we all know, the power costs have increased dramatically in the last 3 years. So with these lease spaces, the power is included with that. We have not raised these rates since 2013. The rate that we're proposing is on par with, or it's on the scale for what our community rents spaces like this for, albeit on the lower end of the scale. We felt that we needed to be on that scale so that we weren't undercutting businesses within the community. But based on the space that is rented, we wanted to be kind of on the lower end of that. Lakeview Arena is kind of cold in the winter, and it's not it would never take top price in the community. So that's why that fee was set as what it was, or recommended. Any questions on the Lakeview Arena fees?
Is it 100% occupied there as far as spaces?
Yeah, it has been. We do have a couple of openings now, but we do have potential renters for those, so we're working diligently to fill those. The one space vacated by engineering has recently been taken over by Superior Hockey. So Superior Hockey is moving from their old place in. That will be vacated. But we do have a couple people that are interested, so we're hoping within the next month to fill that. So, yeah. So it's a situation where we've always kind of filled it, and we haven't looked at it since 2013, so that's why it's here tonight. Any other questions?
Just a comment, John. I think it's fair to point out, and you have it here, but I think people should know. You're talking about raising fees for office and storage. You're only raising them 20%, and you're raising them to the break-even point. So it's not that you're making a profit
Right.
off of it. You're not increasing revenue, whatever. You're just managing the bills.
Yeah. Thanks.
I have a question back on page 20.
Yeah.
You show that the estimated revenue for 2017 was 7,600. For 18, it's 16,500. That's double.
Yeah, I think that speaks to what we did with, and Tina can correct me if I'm wrong. So this speaks to the grant that we helped write for Lake Superior Art Association, and they're
Yeah,
using that grant
'cause I
funding.
thought just a jump, and
Yeah.
there was no, okay, fine, thanks.
So, in terms of justifying the 20% fee increase, not only the utility, but the revenues, it's neutral. If you're trying to keep Lakeview open and keep it supported, you're breaking even right compared to last year. So there's another justification for that fee increase. You have to, otherwise you're losing even more money.
At the last meeting, I don't know if we want to discuss this now or later, but at the last meeting, we referenced what is done at Kaufman Auditorium. And Commissioner Cambenzi spoke to that, charging a fee, $1 or whatever it was, for a specific item that they were doing at the auditorium, and it's had some success. And I know we briefly touched on it last week. Any more thought given to that? And it's not something you're going to implement like overnight, but any discussion on that?
Yeah, I think we've discussed a bit as a staff. I've discussed it with the manager. I think that it's a really interesting idea. The realities of it for us are very difficult. I would not recommend implementing it right away without some more investigation for a couple of reasons. Number one, we don't control ticket sales for any of these events. So these are nonprofits that are out there, and they handle their doors, not us. So it's becomes a tricky thing to administer with our limited staff. The other point on it is that it's not comparable units. What I mean by that is if you are selling tickets for an event and your event is the same kind of event, you're always getting the same kind of a unit. You're getting a ticket sale. That's your unit. Our special events have various different ways in which they make money. Some of them are ticket sales. Some of them are wristband sales for alcohol. Some of them are have no fee whatsoever. If you take Art on the Rocks or Outback Art Fair, there's no fee to get into those events, and they don't sell alcohol. So the units are all different. And so I think that if we were to look at this and try and implement this, it should be done over time with the input of the special events, and take some time to get it right. I think if we did it, with one event or another event as a pilot, I think that all events would cry foul. So it's a neat idea. I think it warrants a bit more investigation into what the best way to implement it is for our unique situation.
Okay, I just think it does merits. I know it's not something you're going to do tomorrow. You can go out and announce it, John, and that would probably get us more commentary on that than the road closures. But anyway, but it is something I think we should really look at, pursue, and I think Commissioner Cambenzi indicated that they do it for a specific purpose. They're buying a new piece of equipment or whatever it is. And but it's something I think to look at, because we've all talked about how do we continue to sustain the Lakeview Arena, because it's important to the community, but still cover our cost.
Right.
So, okay, fine. Thank you.
Just one comment. We don't control or sell any of the tickets either. So we rely on a report from them, a report from NMU that sells a lot of the tickets. So, our idea is that, if they want to cut their numbers or say that there were, 25 less people there, we're not going to do anything. But, typically everyone has reported their numbers in an honest way, and they're selling it as we're raising our ticket fee $1 simply because this dollar goes to the city and everyone will have a better facility. And, we're looking at another huge remodel here in a year with our seats. And I have most of that money now. I don't have to go to the school board and say, can you give me this instead of spending it on a road? So I'd be happy to sit down with anyone and kind of talk through it. In terms of the people that use the auditorium and don't charge, they usually do a suggested donation and end up bringing in even more than the $1 per ticket. So it's worked out extremely well for us. We haven't had any complaints, and again, that pot of revenue is there, and I guess it saved me from having to go beg for money, which is nice.
Well, if there's no further questions on that, like I said, I think that it warrants some thoughtful input and some working with the user groups to kind of figure out the ins and outs of all these different animals that we don't really oversee to that level. But I think there's some possibilities there. If there's no more questions on page 29 on Lakeview Arena. Page 30 is the transient rates, which were set in February by Waterways. So they're in here. Page 31 is the marina rates. We do have some changes here. And so consistent with the policy that was adopted this year in October, we have made an attempt to implement that. A little bit of a sticking point. At the time that we brought that marina policy forward, we were hoping that 2018 would be the year that we could build out Presque Isle Marina. In talking with the grantor, that's not the case. It's going to be a 2019 project. And so the goal was to have the 15% increase in 2018 and or the year of the build out of Presque Isle, and 5% after that. So these rates are reflective of a compromise of that. Cinder Pond Marina being in reasonably good shape, we decided to recommend the 15% increase for Cinder Pond. And Presque Isle Marina, if you've been down there lately, the slip holders are still dealing with a facility that's subpar. So those rates we felt we would do the 5% now. If approved, then the next year we'd flip this and we'd do 15% at Presque Isle for the new facility and 5% at Cinder Pond, and that would equate to the same rate per linear foot. So it works out, and we thought it was a nice compromise on that. So that is what's being recommended for the fees for slip holders. The other change in here would be the pump out. So those fees have all been reduced to $5 no matter what size your tank is. And that was a condition of the grant that we got for the new pump out. We have installed that pump out at Cinder Pond. It's working great. And then they're working on the infrastructure at Presque Isle to install the one up there. So I think it goes without speaking that we do that. Those rates.
Did you get one Cinder Pond and one at Presque Isle?
Yeah, two. Yeah. So
Fuel is being sold where?
fuel is being sold at both right now. About 80% of our fuel is sold at Cinder Pond, but with the new build out, fuel would not be sold at Presque Isle. Which
You're probably going to come to this, but how many slips are being currently rented at both marinas?
For the first time in a long, long time, we had a vacancy in Cinder Pond. One. And I think it was just this size left, and there wasn't anybody, jumping on that size. It's almost always full with a waiting list, and there's still a large waiting list for the 30-plus size slips. So, yeah. Presque Isle has several vacancies. And part of that, I think, is that the slips that are left are some of the, less desirable ones. They're tilted at more than a 20-degree angle. So I think people look at them and they're like, yeah, I'll wait for the new one. So I think that we have 49 available. We started out the season with 40 filled. And we have 45 now. We had a number of mid-season, so there's a discounted rate mid-season. So we had a number of mid-season people jump on. So
again, how many are rented?
we have 4 vacant. Yeah, and 2 decommissioned, just because of safety concerns, maintenance, safety.
The grant, you say that's not going to be approved until, it's not going to be approved this year, for next year?
Yeah, so the soonest that we could do it would be after next season. So
When do you find out about the grant?
it goes to the legislature in October the following year, 2018. So it's
Oh, you put it in earlier this year.
I'm sorry, I was incorrect on that. So it'd be October of this year, and then
It's decided October of this year. Right?
I'd have to follow up on that. I'm pretty sure it actually is October of 2018 is the way that works. I think they're a year behind on their cycle.
They approved it in October.
Staff recommended it, and I think they're a year out on their cycles, and that's why we got confused in the beginning. We assumed that once approved, it'd go to the legislature and we could move on it right before the next season. And it's actually, there's a year gap. So I can verify that again for you. I have several emails on it going back and forth.
Telling everybody we're going to start next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the original. And then if you recall, we had some confusion during the capital improvements work session. And that was where it was kind of clarified that we'll have one more season with Presque Isle. And then the new facility would start for the 2019 season.
Okay. Well,
It was confusing to us originally too. That's why we originally said 2018. So
I'd just like to see it sooner than later.
yeah, we all would for sure.
It's good to see you're adjusting some rates for everybody, because, I mean, obviously, I know hearing before been said, we get the boaters to pay for their home, which is fine, but the city doesn't do that. I mean, you're working on it for Lakeview, I see you're increasing the rates for Lakeview to try and make that up to, but the city doesn't have they don't do that for everybody. They say not everybody can use the marina. That's true. If you don't have a boat, you could still go by there, you can look at it, but there's other things, the city, tourist park at Lakeview, and everybody uses Lakeview except for a special event, where you go to, and that if you don't play hockey or roller derby, you don't really use it. So I just think it's unfair sometimes when the boarders are willing to do it a little bit now, but just be aware if you read the rates too much, to make a point where they may say, okay, we're not going to put a boat in the market. So it may come to a point where you may have to look at it and say, okay, we have to put the rates on hold because our slips aren't full. May have to look at that eventually and, just have to see it. And the other thing is, I noticed with, the winter storage rate down the Lower Harbor, Madison Park, it was just a flat fee for everybody. There's a fee for city residents and a fee for non-residents. Then they raised the rate, and quite a few boats just pulled out and went somewhere else. So, I mean, there could be a point where it's like, it used to be full, and last year it was maybe half full, quarter full. So just something to look at, eventually. The thing is, I'll talk to you later about we noticed have been up. I know some of the slips at Presque Isle are tilted and all, but I noticed all the light poles are sinking. If we're going to wait another year, that's fine. But something to look at is, you know, so those things don't sink all the way down. Something to look at, and then just to, I know you get a new pump out working up there. That's great, because I know it's been a complaint to all the boaters up there. The pump out not working. They're paying the same fee as Cinder Pond. Cinder Pond is everything working fine. Prescal is not working. So if you just look into that, maybe DPW can work on over the winter. You know, just making sure get all the electricity working, the pump out's working now. So it's one check off your list. Just try and make everything working up there, because like having a apartment or house with stuff's not working. So just, you know, just keep in mind, look at the rates and, okay, if we're not full anymore, so maybe if they're just the rate. So just, you know, work at the later, but glad you're working on stuff. So that's the only thing I'm going to say is I've heard people that say, you know, it's unfair. Board friends of mine say it's unfair for them to fit the bill for their place. The thing is, you're going to take away fuel at Prescal. And I mean, I filled up that day because I was heading up that way, and you know, Cinder Pond was full. So what's happens if Cinder Pond Marina fuel tanks break down? Then there's no place to go. The other thing you have to look at, the place my parents go to for the winter in Florida, they don't have fuel at their marina either. It's not uncommon, but they also have a lot more boats than we do. But they have a tanker that comes in and just fills everybody up. So you could look into that maybe as an option for the boarders up at Prescal, is say get a hold of some tanker that's marine certified and say, okay, if you got X amount of people that want fuel, tanker comes in. I mean, it's still paid for by the city, but then, you know, just something to look at maybe for because I know a lot of boarders up there, they don't want to have to go into Cinder Pond to fill up if they're going north or whatever. So just something to look at, John. Thanks for your hard work.
Commissioner Conley?
This is more curiosity. It doesn't have any fiscal impact, but just interest. Are some of the sailboats in the mooring field, will they go to Prescal Marina when that's modernized? Do you know? Any feeling for that?
Well, typically, the folks that we have in the mooring field tend to like the mooring field, and the folks we have in slips tend to not want to be in the mooring. They tend to be two totally different clients. We get very little crossover between the two.
Okay, thanks. I was just wondering if some of those boats were there because there wasn't accommodations for a sailboat with a keel.
Not to the best of my knowledge,
Okay,
but yeah,
thanks.
great question.
Commissioner Frazier?
It's equivalent of some people like camping at Wally World, and some people like camping at Tourist Park. Like, that's the way to look at it. You know, the people in the mooring field, great people, but they don't want to pay the extra money to go in the marina. They'd rather camp at Wally World than camp at Tourist Park. So it's just something to, that's why the people out there, I mean, and that is declined too. I mean, the city raised the rate on that just a little bit, but that used to be full. And now that's declined a little bit. Just something to, you know, we raise rates for everything to make Gary happy, but, you know, we have to look at that eventually, you know. But I would say that's the difference, Mike. If you're thinking about it, let's say people in the mooring field are happy where they're at. They want to pay for the full fee for Tourist Park, so.
Okay, John.
All right, if there's no further questions on page 31, we'll move on to page 32. Parks and Recreation fees. So this year, again, this is one we haven't looked at in a long time. This would be the youth and adult activity fees. So things like baseball, soccer, all of those were raised this year. So we've gone up team fees from $130 a team to $150 a team for baseball, and soccer's gone up from 75 to 95. And same for the adults, 115 for soccer up to 135, and then baseball 300 up to 320. Those are the only changes within that, and again, we haven't changed those since we implemented those fees. So trying to keep up with the increase of maintenance costs. If there's no questions on fees, we'll follow Gary's schedule here and move on to arts and culture. All right, page 103. This is the fact sheet. This kind of outlines the revenues for arts and culture, and then some of the splits of within our department and how those wages get divvied up. Really, no real change this year with this, for the most part. Tina, did you have anything you wanted to add with that?
I'm thinking, next year we'll probably change some of these, well, that's more of the fact sheets, but as you can tell, copies, they're cheap nowadays. People have their own printers. That used to be a major revenue in the art center's earlier years, but it's not so much anymore. Our rental is up because that's Lake Superior Art Association. They used to pay just for their rental space, the large main gallery. Now they pay all the administrative fees that go along with that space, and we have assisted writing grants for them for the last 3 years. This is the first year they're on their own now. We've assisted a little bit, so they're really becoming an independent organization and paying a lot with admin fees. That's what you see in the Art Center Other. They pay $6,000 for administration fees for all their exhibits, and then of course their rental. Art Center rental also includes senior services, the senior service budget. They pay to use the space for their art classes and acting classes.
So if there's no questions on 103, yeah, go ahead.
Tina, with the library looking at, looking at renovating, might we see an increase in some activity, because I think part of the art space is going to be reconfigured, or?
Yeah, I've been working on the library space plan committee and involved in their strategic plan, and our footprint is going to be a lot smaller. We are looking at getting rid of the small works gallery in our office, but we are getting a better space. The windows, what do you call those? The sunlight.
Skylights, yeah.
Thanks. Skylight will be ceilinged off, so the temperature is not freezing in the winter and really hot in the summer. We'll be getting a new administrative office. Right now I share an office with my 2 administrative staff, and so there's a real need for more office space. So we're getting a much more improved space, but we'll have a smaller footprint. And I think what we'll have is a destination. Right now, the lower level of the library, you walk down, there's lots of stuff going on. You're not quite sure where the community room is or where things are. It's going to be a really beautiful destination when you go downstairs with an expanded children's library and really beautiful lobby area.
I have another question on page 104. There you have the program statistics. The Halloween Spectacular Art Week is $21,000.
21,000 participants, but that's also visitors to our gallery. So keeping with how they tracked attendance before my time, we take a percentage from Peter White Public Library attendance through the walk-through the doors. But we also, Spectacle and Art Week was probably over 6,000 people this year with the Plein Air Painting Festival. So it's probably half and half.
Okay, so the Halloween Spectacular.
We'll get into that a little bit, but
Okay.
yeah, I can kind of, on the next page, we'll
And next
correct
year,
it.
maybe our program statistics, since we are doing a lot more advocacy, we might kind of change those to reflect that. So it's not so much it's been the same for a long time, so we might change that up next year to tell a better story.
Tom's gonna start on the Halloween thing next year.
The other point to just kind of look at on page 104 is that the groups using the space appear to be up, but again, that is kind of calculated in the best tool that we have, which is not 100% accurate, but it does appear that we have more visitors to the center for those unpaid spaces. So always a good thing. If there's no more questions on the fact sheets, we move on to page 105. This is the budget for cultural events, arts and culture. I think the point here to look at, really is that we're requesting a budget that's very similar to last year. This budget has very little changes. Some of the incidental things we changed, talk about transportation, 860. So that went up $500 just because we realized that we are incurring some more cost for some of the programs that we're really getting into, and some of the professional opportunities that we're exposing the UP to, such as the UP Regional Art Alliance. That's a very value-added thing. It's gotten Marquette a lot of publicity, and Tina's really spearheaded that initiative and been a good voice on that initiative, that alliance. So, but it does cost a little bit more to get around to the different places they meet. So, very few exceptions, pretty standard budget. Tom, you asked about the spectacle. So within 957 special events, the request there is 11,000. The spectacle is part of that. That's $5,000 of city funds. The spectacle costs about $12,000 to put on. That's part of that is our $5,000. DDA puts in $2,500, and the community raises about $4,500 in various ways in order to fund that. So,
Do you pay for the entire Halloween thing?
no.
It is about $12,000.
Yeah, we pay $5,000.
The DDA, and then a grant that we've been co-writing together for the last 2 years.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it really is, again, it's the experience. The community has been working on it for a month already. So I see it as an investment in the 2 months preparation for that short evening that's gotten a lot of attention, but really it is the process.
It's been a good partnership with the city and the DDA and the community. So. Any questions on 105?
We're good.
Okay. Moving right along, public art. So this is a new one, page 117. And I'll just kind of read what we put in there as the function. Most of you were present for the work session that we had. The City of Marquette accepts responsibility for developing a public art investment policy to expand the opportunity for its citizens to experience art in public places. The Public Art Fund is a dedicated fund to support the inclusion of works of art in public spaces in the city. As a special revenue fund, the public art funding is deposited, transferred, and used for acquisition, commissioning, performance, exhibition, and cleaning, repair, and restoration of public art. So again, this is what once was thought of as an ordinance and then moved into a policy that directs the fund. And we have no program statistics on this at this time because it hasn't happened yet. But page 118 is the sheet, and again, this would be a transfer of $30,000 toward public art. Now, we haven't talked about exactly when we're bringing this to the commission. It was my understanding it was going to be on the 11th. Mike, is that what you were thinking, September 11th?
Could be. Not sure exactly the timeline yet. I received a copy of the revised policy from Tina today, and I haven't had a chance to review it, but it could be as early as the September, first meeting in September. It should bring forth the policy that it dictates the public art task force, or the public art contribution from the commission through the budget, that we will contribute to $30,000 annually.
But- So that officially states that's what we're doing?
Yes, it's a city policy that's in a process of being completed right now.
Okay.
Make up the committee and everything.
Yeah, the appointment of the,
And we said there was gonna be no match, you don't have to do any matching, it's just 30,000.
correct. Correct, there's no strings attached. I mean, no strings like that.
Still going after grants,
Yeah, I
more
mean,
grants.
so I see that 30,000, that would roll over to next year. A portion of that would, we'd have to start working on our maintenance for the Father Marquette statue and the other pieces of public art that will be going up next year with the improvement of the park. But also, we have to put together our public art commission if its policy is passed, and that might take a little consulting from someone. That's going to be the biggest part. But once that arts commission has all the guidelines in place, which I imagine is going to take about a year, then we can start looking at projects, and hopefully by then we'll have some money. I know East Lansing, it took them 4 years to accumulate enough dollars with grants in the city fund until they could do a piece of art. So it's going to take a couple of years for that to happen.
Commissioner Conley?
I think the Public Art Task Force envisions and includes as part of the policy, the revised policy, setting up not only the Public Art Commission that will administer this, jury the art and acquisition and decide. It will also decide on maintenance of things like the Father Marquette statute, other areas of public art that we have, soon to be the Phil Namasto. Whether that's DDA or the city is yet to be determined. But one part of the policy is to set up a not-for-profit corporation, a 501c3, designed to accept contributions. And it may take, the Marquette Public Art Committee may also have to be members of the board of directors of that committee, but it's specifically to accept contributions. So that's being included as a part of this. Can the city accept contributions? Yes, but the donor can't deduct the contributions, so that's why they want to encourage contributions to this. They want to set up a separate fund.
You have to have that separate fund.
Yeah, and there was some thought about putting this in the, as part of the community foundation. The community foundation will not do a pass-through grant anymore. They used to. So that if a donor gave money, let's say the donor gave $5,000 to acquire a piece of art, the community foundation is set up to accept that $5,000 and allow you to grant from any income that $5,000 endowment generates. What we want is a pass-through, which is why the policy envisions having its own 501c3, so we don't have to accumulate a large endowment within the community funds to get enough money in order to maintain and acquire various types of art. So that's being accorded. There's an offer. There's a cost, of course, to setting up a corporation. We have some. A party is interested in donating the legal services that would require to set up the 501c3. I don't think there's any way that we can get around the state filing fee, which even a municipality has to file, and it's in the hundreds of dollars, not in the thousands of dollars. The legal work is thousands, but that's going to be, we anticipate that'll be pro bono. But anyway, so that'll kind of kick that off, that big donation from for legal services. But that's so we're already, that the committee is already, or the task force is already looking forward to accepting contributions, and whether they be matches or some qualified donation or whatever, nobody knows.
Can you accept them if you don't have a foundation?
Well, if they contribute to the public art committee directly as part of the city, you couldn't tax deduct it. And if you don't give a damn about your taxes,
That's right, well, yeah,
you could.
most people want that deduction.
Almost everybody does.
Yeah. So the sooner you get it, the better.
Yes.
The 4th of July, we have people, all those contributions are deductible, and the Lake Superior Community Partnership does everything for us. They have it, Sue up there does paperwork. We obviously had to get our own filing and everything, but we've been putting our money there, and we pay a flat fee for the administration of it. And our money comes in and goes out rather rapidly. Yeah.
Well, I think we haven't really thought that through, but we're kind of hoping that any bookkeeping that gets done for that will be done kind of internally and quietly. You know, without having to pay another organization to do our book work.
I missed that work session, but is it I guess, is it the intent of the city manager to bring this forward and commit $30,000 every year out of our budget?
Yes, and until I'm told otherwise. There has been 30,000 placed into this budget per the direction of the work session. And that was 30,000 was arrived at through a compromise, so to speak, between varying factions in this whole discussion. So our intent is to put the 30,000 in the budget, and before the budget is approved, to have the policy in front of you for approval as well that would incorporate this $30,000 annually, unless this commission or a future commission or somebody else changes that.
I think this is going to catch us a lot of heat at a time when we have record high debt as a city. And I think people are going to look at us and say, what are your priorities? What are the priorities of a city? Not that none of us don't like art and appreciate art and want art in our city, but we can't even pave people's roads and fix their water and sewer. And that is the first priority. No other department has a policy that appropriates money to it every year. There's not one. And I think it's going to be extremely disappointing if this goes forward and we're not creative to find another way to get this money. So I just want it known right now that I see this as an extreme special interest. I think several of us have brought up different ways, including the grants funding that's available to the city every year. And if administration brings this forward, I think it's going to not bode well for the majority of citizens in Marquette.
Commissioner Plort.
With all due respect, Commissioner, I'm not sure what roads you're talking about that we can't pave. There's construction going on all over the city. But I would like to mention under this context that a lot of people saw the work session or are involved or know what the work session is about. And I've had nothing but positive reaction to this. In fact, most of the time people have said 30,000 isn't enough. My response to that has been, that's a start, and that's what we're going to work with. And so I support it. I think it's something that we need to do. It's a public art initiative, and I've talked to many people, and I haven't had one person say anything against the idea of public art or funding it in this context.
City Manager.
I guess I'll just make one further point that the original conversation was around an ordinance, and the policy was I believe, the compromise. So I think it was acceptable to, at least through the work session, as an acceptable solution. So thank you.
Yeah, an ordinance would have been more binding, and we would be no deviating from that. At least this, 30,000 is a better compromise, and I think we're all for that. Okay, John, move.
Very good. I think we'll have more conversations to come about that. Moving on from that and kind of back to the promotional fund, which is next on the schedule Gary's put forward. Page 72. This is promotional fund revenues. I'll give you a second to get there. For the most part, this, just as a reminder to the commission, this was set in place a number of years back as a vehicle to sort of stop the constant flow of folks coming before the commission asking for fee relief. So now there's a policy and a vehicle for them to apply for it within the budget process. There's a deadline of March 31st to get that application in, and then it comes before you during the budget process. So really streamlined and kind of made a lot of sense out of what was a little bit chaotic prior to this. With this year's promotional fund revenues, what's proposed, there are 3 additions. Those would be the Marquette DDA Classic Cars on 3rd that we just had on 3rd Street, requesting $1,400 in fee relief, and the Marquette Roller Derby, requesting $1,000 in fee relief, and the Halloween Spectacle requesting $1,000. So those are the 3 changes this year, a little bit different than last year, but still in the same ballpark. Any
Commissioner
questions
Baldini.
Commissioners, and also for the manager and Gary and others, I put a memo on your desk this evening, which I was looking at this sort of information, which is great, but we do not retrieve, excuse me, we do not retrieve any information from the events. We do from some, depending what the event is. But so I've spoken to a couple of people, just sort of off the record, and DDA being one, the Visitors and Travel Bureau, and some of the people who do host this, and saying, what would happen if we said, we approve these events very often? You know, they're going to use Matson Park, they're going to use Lakeview Arena, and what if at the end of that contract, where they have to put a $1 million budget in, or a bond, or whatever it is, we just say, would you provide the following information? And I don't know what that is, but I think we're looking for attendance, maybe money spent, so on and so forth. And I did not want to have the city to start being somebody here having to be the scribe and tally that. And so the 2 organizations thought they could get an intern. We even thought of talking to Northern, because there's talk there of putting together some sort of rural division school thing, looking at rural property, looking at political, sociological, even these numbers sort of things. And so I put that there. I don't know if it requires action on our part, maybe not, just tacit agreement on our part, where we would go out and solicit information. I talked to the Beer Fest guy. He said, I don't care. Well, I'd be happy to. And there's a gentleman sitting with him who said, my God, he said, we spend a lot of money when we come here. He said, I bring 4 or 5 people. They spend 3 days here. He said, so on and so forth. And I'm not, as you saw in the memo, somebody said, it's not going to be exact, but it's better that we have maybe an inaccurate account than no account at all. And it just might be, I'm more familiar with the 4th of July, what goes through the Exchange Club down in the harbor, the Kiwanis Club doing the parade, what we collect, go out and collect and spend for the fireworks and this and that. So we have some of that data. Number of people, we have no idea. And they make estimates down in the park, but we know that people are scattered every place else watching this. So I thought maybe it's something we start, we put into place. I'm prepared to do some of the legwork rather than have the staff do it. But I think it's something that we're a growing city, we're moving, we got all these activities, and I think we should have some idea about numbers. I mean, we had the classic car event this weekend, well attended. How many, all these cars there for one thing was great. How many people showed up approximately? Do they know? And some other information. It's not that we want to snoop or anything, but I do think it's important for us when we go out and promote. If you think about between now and the first snowfall, I shouldn't use that, it could come early, but the number of activities we have this weekend, next weekend, the Beer Fest, Halloween coming up, everything else, a lot of activity. And I went to an event this past week and ran into a lot of people from across the Upper Peninsula. and everybody was talking to us, oh, how lively Marquette has been. They come here and they say how lively downtown is. How does that happen? I said, well, it's people, it's volunteers. It's what goes on in the town. But we don't have some of that data, and I suspect as we gather it, we'll probably say, I'm not sure how accurate it is. But maybe as we work with it, we could refine it. Maybe we can include the university, the business school, econ department, and even our own people. I think it would be something down the road that we could use as a city, as different organizations, and there's some interest out there. As you noticed in the thing, I said we would like, I think we should include the chamber, probably Lake Superior Community Partnership, talk to some of the fraternal groups, and as I said, I'd be willing to do some of that unless John wants to do it all on his own. So I did talk briefly to the city manager about it, but we haven't obviously taken any action. He could probably do that by himself, and maybe we want to explore just doing that, putting it on that and doing it. But I don't know, and maybe we should also talk to our council. But I think it's worth something for us as a city to consider, and we could probably on those requests when they come to us, we vote on it. Yes, you can hold this event. We might say, we want this information from you at the end also. So I just, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Conley?
A comment. I used to wonder why the hell the city taxpayers had to pay for this. Now I've come totally 180 degrees around, and I see these events are what makes Marquette a place to live, that attracts people to visit and to move here. So this is very important. Just one question, clarification. On 72 Halloween Spectacle, $1,000 of fee waiver, and that's on top of the $5,000 that we kick into. So the total allocation for that is $6,000. Yeah. So, and the same with the city band, fee relief plus a budget allocation to them.
Right.
No problem with that. I just wanted to know if those were additive or inclusive.
Right.
Additive. Okay. Thank you. It's still worth it to me. Thank you.
Sir?
Well, two things. I agree with Tom. I know that it would also probably be beneficial to what you were saying for like business owners per se. As the Classic Cars on 3rd, Mana told me there was about 3,000 people that went in out, and none of the business owners thought that many people would show up. So like Border Grill had nothing going. No, all these groups had nothing going because they had no idea the amount of people that would be going through these events. So I think the same thing would apply like for Blueberry Fest this year. If anybody's been to that this year, it was insane. So I agree with you, Tom. My other question, though, is just so I kind of forget, John, is this the amount that they request for fee relief, or do we come up with this number?
That's the amount they request.
Okay.
Yep. All right, if I can, I think this topic is one that maybe warrants just one comment from staff. The Arts and Culture Master Plan does include a cataloging or effort to capture those kinds of metrics, and the Creative Chamber, the grant that the Chamber of Commerce has gotten, has taken an interest in that, so that might be one other possible venue for that. But also in the past, Travel Marquette has done some research on things such as hockey tournaments, things of that nature, and I think they have put some numbers to the No Cayman on Ski Marathon, and that's all very interesting economic data. So,
Commissioner Frazier, did you have a question?
If you're gonna make Mike do this, Tom, he'll probably push it to the tech department. I would say some website or something. They could, are you attending this event? Yes or no. Very simple. They'll be able to see who's attending. I mean, all this stuff with online stuff. They'll probably have some website, and based off ticket sales, that will tell you how many people go. Except for the car show is different, but I mean, Beer Fest, Tom's Little Harbor Fest. I mean, ticket sales would be one thing. Just a simple online poll. Might have the tech department do the some sort of tech website. Say, are you attending the event? Yes or no. I mean, simple as that. Then we'll know, and then be good for other businesses to know. Okay, there's gonna be a lot of people coming to town for this. I know my friend runs a restaurant, And with the big ski events or bike races, people always come to this restaurant to fill up on carbs. Because I'm not a biker, I'm not a skier. But I mean, that's what they do to get energy to do the events. So it'd be a good thing to tell our local people, okay, there's a lot of people coming to town today, and here's how many people are coming. Get some more people working.
I don't want to take up too much of our time here because this is the budget, but I just want to inject it at this point because it's something we as a city and a commission can pursue at a different point, but I thought it was an opportune moment to talk about this. So, okay, thank you. Perhaps we should proceed. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, moving along.
All right, moving on from page 72 to page 73. This is promotional fund expenditures. So these would be actually cash that's given out to groups that apply for it. There is only one change. We've historically given $7,000 to the city band and $10,000 to the beautification committee. Beautification committee has asked for $12,000 this year for some additional irrigation at Father Marquette.
I'm sorry to ask another question, but at our last meeting, it appears that there may be some, not excess, but some funds left over for the request for the grant from the state of Michigan on the Father Marquette. And I notice here, we're looking for money for sprinkler, and that would, I think you could submit an amendment, and that would probably might be something they would accept. Just, I don't know how much it's gonna cost, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've done a little bit of looking into that, and it does appear like it might be possible. We'd have to submit an amendment for additional scope items, and then they'd have to approve it. So it'd be up to the state to approve those scope items. But if there's no further questions on 73, we're going to move on to page 69. This is Parks and Rec, or 96. This is Parks and Recreation, Community Services Administration. So the first sheet is the fact sheet, and this kind of outlines a lot of the metrics that we have going forward. I think that, let's see. So we have our revenues in here. The previous year we had a little bit higher revenues, and that was in part due to some higher grant funds. This year, of note, in 676, the Marquette Tennis Association is putting forth the dollars toward the Williams Park tennis court and ADA accessibility. So that's in 676. They're putting forward $40,000, and then the promotional fund that goes into this account would be $18,370. Then it has the breakdown of the authorized positions, and then on the following page, this is all part of the fact sheet, has some of our metrics. I think it shows that that our facilities are well used, and that we're really getting a lot of rentals. Soccer fields have had kind of an increase. Baseball fields over the years have decreased a little bit. I think that the pavilions have held pretty steady. Of note, based on our conversation tonight, we do administer 60 events within the city of Marquette, and that's when I speak with these folks every year. I always tell them that these events are what really makes one of the things that really make Marquette a really amazing place to live and work. So kudos to the groups that put forth those 60 events. If there's, yeah.
We have a fund balance retained earnings account that Gary always shares with us. And do we have any such thing for the gazebo, the band shell, things of that nature, or do we fund those as needed? Gary?
Mostly they're funded as needed. There is a, in order to have alcohol at the pavilion, there's a surcharge for that, and we are putting money away for that, but that's to be used specifically for the pavilion. But that's the only facility right now that we have a sinking fund, so to speak, and everything else is handled, pay as you go. So.
Thank you.
Any questions of the fact sheet for community services? Okay. Moving on to page 98. This is the pavilion, and this includes the infield maintenance on the ball fields and our services to provide staff for the pavilions. So we have a pavilion attendant that goes out and opens the place up, makes sure that it's prepared for the renters, and then closes it down. And then we have 3 ball field maintenance folks that prepare, chalk, and line the infields for the games. Page 99. Yeah.
Previous page, what is the senior pavilion?
Yeah, so the manager asked about the senior pavilion on the previous page. That's actually a pavilion that is, it's right kind of behind Moosewood. It's a small pavilion. It's for rent. I think it's maybe $14 an hour. It's not very expensive. It's basically a roof and a cement patio. So,
Yeah, I went back to 97 just with a question. Yeah.
and so it's one of, we have the pavilion, the senior pavilion that the manager referenced, and then we have the ice cream store pavilion right on the corner there. And then we have the gazebo, the band shell, and then what we refer to as the pavilion, the log structure right across from the old caretaker's house. Page 99, 751. I think of note here, and we spoke a little bit about it. 740 is the alcohol fees. So that would be the what we're anticipating on spending out of the fund for the pavilion. This fiscal year, we looked at replacing an oven and tables and a table rack. This proposed budget, we're looking at replacing the fridge out there. And purchasing some new chairs and a rack for that. So that's the, when Gary refers to the fund that is kept from the alcohol funds, it's that line item, $5,500 this year. Mostly an unchanged budget from the previous year. We did include a little bit more in transportation and conferences. As you know, we will have some changing senior staff, and I feel that it'll be important for the people in those roles to do some networking in their new roles. So we will be looking to go to the Michigan Parks and Recreation conference this year, and there'll be with 2 going, that would be an additional cost. But for the most part, unchanged. 972 is the Williams Park improvements. So that'd be the budget of $160,000 for that. Any questions on 99?
Professional and contractual dropped by 90%. From fiscal 2017 to 2018, 88,000.
Yeah, that's a good question. I can speak to that. And so that is where we put the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And with the changing of staff, we are intending to get the ad hoc committee going in December this coming year, so we will encumber those funds. So again, that was $70,000 for the master plan and then a new citizen survey. So this coming year, we will be looking to undertake that. That is a very staff-intensive process that will involve creating an ad hoc committee, bringing someone from the commission onto that, bringing people from within the community to be part of that. And with the current staffing levels, we had to pick something this year that wasn't going to happen.
So the
we-
88,000 is coming out of the budget. I mean, that's going to be spent in the next 6 weeks.
No,
what you're
it
saying?
will encumber the funds, so we'll put it into the next fiscal year. So that's
So it rolls
70,000. Right.
That's what you're saying. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
All right. If there's no further questions on that, we'll move into the senior center. Senior center, page 141. This is the in-home services. So this kind of speaks to the program which we have homemakers go out and provide services to our seniors, and they do sign up for this program. And we staff this program according to the need. And again, there's a suggested donation with this program, and you'll see that in the revenues. Page 142. This is the senior services allocated and local millage. And of note with this, of course, a number of years back we went out for a millage, and that sort of highlighted the need. I guess it's the ultimate survey question, and the community really responded with yes, they wanted this service for the community, and they were willing to pay for it. So with this, we've seen a lot of good news stories. I think that it's enabled us to do some of the programming that the community really appreciates. Last year we had the Silver Sampler, which was an opportunity for seniors to go out and try some new sports, some new opportunities within our local community, and it's been hugely popular. 143 is the actual revenues and expenditures. So senior services 290. I think that as you look at this, 453 is the upcap dollars coming in, the 40,000 this year. 593 is the suggested donation or contributions, estimated at around 23,000. That's been fairly reliable. And if you look at 586, that's the county millage. So, and those funds are primarily used for main services, not necessarily for the programs. We use the city millage mostly for the programs in addition to the overhead costs.
Commissioner Conley had a question.
Looking at 543, the Silver Sampler, we're not getting a grant. Does the program go away then?
No, we're requesting funds for that this year. So you'll see in, let's see here. I added it in here. Let's see. Yeah, you'll see it on page 144. We'll talk about that. So
Okay.
we're actually
thank you.
requesting some
Thank
funds
you.
for it. Yep. In-home services expenditures. I think when you look at this one, you will see a little bit of an increase, and that's it's comparative to the service. So we have 8 homemakers versus 6 homemakers at the time of the last budget, and that's just respective to the clients. So we have an estimated 145 clients, and at the time of the last budget, we had 125. So as we get more clients, we try not to keep them on a waiting list. We try and hire homemakers to fill that need. So you'll see a little bit of an increase, but but we should see some donations out of that as well. Any questions on 143? Now we'll move on to 144. This is senior services allocation and local millage, and this is the reason I kept Tina here. That we do have a topic to talk about on this one, change from the proposed budget that she may be able to help enlighten us a little bit on. Item 801, professional contractual. That's listed in the proposed budget as $10,100, and we received a proposal in the last week. I talked with the manager and with Gary, and they said to bring it up tonight. The proposal is a proposal for the senior acting program, and I think it's an excellent proposal. The instructor for that program has sort of come up with an idea that we think may be able to double our participants in this program. So senior acting up until this point has been a good program that has mostly been about reading lines and actually acting on stage. But I think that there's a lot of aspects of theater that it doesn't cover at this time. And so the proposal is to actually up the funding and partner with NMU and work to provide opportunities for people to experience all the different aspects of theater. So a good example might be as a retired gentleman, you might have possibly no interest in speaking lines, but you might take a real interest in going behind the scenes and helping to build set. So this program would give the opportunity for those experiences. I think that it warrants it, and I said that I would bring it forward in this hearing just so that we could have that conversation and see if it was something you'd be willing to entertain. And maybe Tina can speak just briefly about some of the energy and excitement that has come through this proposal, as she was a part of that meeting.
We have a really exciting senior arts program that's been growing. Right now we have the visual arts, where twice a month city residents for free can take an art class by a professional artist. A few years back we extended that to the performing arts, and it started with an acting class. We have about 5 to 10 regular students who participate in this acting class. But, a lot of people the idea of acting and speaking lines as an appeal. But one of the things that's really changed things is when the director that we've contracted with started taking people to the Lake Superior Theater in the summer and participating in dress rehearsals and director talkbacks after the dress rehearsals with the students. They got really charged up about this, and it got a lot more interest from other people. So we'd like to expand this to the Superior Theater experience, where NMU is very interested in partnering, so observing of theater classes, behind the stage tours, special after show discussions with the actors, and even potentially a program that links students that are studying theater and one of the seniors to talk about their experience, character development, where they can share what they're learning together. It's really exciting. I see this could also happen for music within our community, but it involves the seniors within the community, and that's the idea, is to get them engaged and to participate in things that they might not have thought of before.
Commissioner Frazier?
I think Mike could be excellent at that. He gets a lot of people write his dialogue for him. I mean, just like an actor. Actor is people that write their scripts for him all the time. I mean, Mike's got a whole staff to write dialogue for him, and I think he'd be an excellent person to help with the senior actors. He would be great at, he's got great, he'd be more of a speaking part, I think, more than behind the scenes, but he'd be great at it, I think.
Yeah, John.
Just one other note about this increase from the proposed. It would be covered by the millage. So It would be the additional funds requested, so the 14,500 for 801, that would be covered by the millage. So all, these programs are millage funded. Another note on this.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you said it's covered by the millage, so the millage provides a certain amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Is this an additional millage that we're asking?
No, so this would still not exceed the millage dollars coming in. So
Okay, so, I mean, it's no additional cost. Something else is then being reduced to make room for this program, is that right?
there's actually maybe Gary can talk a little bit more about this, but there's actually a little bit of a fund balance. So, and those things can be used for facility improvements and things of that nature. So,
I'm not speaking against it, but I just want to know what we're talking. One, how much are we talking? And two, where is it coming from?
This fund here, it stands alone, so it's not supported by the general fund, but it's supported by the special millage and also by the contracts that they have. There is over a $500,000 fund balance available in this fund, and the way the budget is currently structured, if everything comes out exactly the way we put on paper here, we would use $21,360 of that fund balance. And if we add, about $4,500 more, based on what just Tina and John were talking about, that would add to that 21,000, basically make it 25,000 of fund balance that would be used. In other words, the expenses would exceed the revenues by that amount. But again, it's self-supporting. It's not funded by the general fund at all.
Gary, John spoke about housekeeping as well, and you said, John, that when you get enough requests, you don't want to put people on a waiting list. I think it's would I be correct when I say the fund balance helps with that, so that you know that if you have enough people that need housekeeping, for example, you can get them service right away.
Correct, and that's one of the reasons to have a fund balance like that. Originally, too, we were trying to build up the fund balance in this fund because at least it was going to be explored, maybe relocating the senior service center. And we were wanting to have sufficient funds in order to help facilitate that. I believe that talk has now died down. So I know the staff has been encouraged by myself to look at ways to maybe spend down some of that fund balance because we don't want it to get too high.
But it's kind of a nice thing to have, like, in your back pocket, because there are other services as well besides housekeeping, senior art. You have the senior center. There are all kinds of activities going on at the senior center. And you spoke of silver
sampler.
Yeah. I'm sure with the staff, and I know some of the staff, I mean, and seniors are always coming up with other ideas, things we'd like to see. I'm sure you're getting those, John and Tina, you're getting those as well. Things we'd like to see as far as senior services are concerned. So I'm glad to hear that there's a fund balance that allows that. And I'm glad to hear that if a senior citizen does need housekeeping, for example, there's no waiting list for that. They can request it and they can get it now. So I like the idea.
All right, one additional point on this page, Commissioner Conley asked about the silver sampler. In 957, we do have $10,000 budgeted here for that program to continue. If there's no further questions about this, we're going to move on to Tourist Park, page 173. All right, 173 is the fact sheet for Tourist Park. This is pretty much a good news story. We are showing on here, estimated revenues for 2017 being slightly under 2016. 2016 was a record year for us. Now 2017 started off a little cold and rainy, if you remember, and that's not necessarily good for a campground, but we are still holding out hopes that we might still break the record. So the revenues for camping revenue are looking pretty good, and the revenues on firewood sales and other things have exceeded expectations so far this year. So we may be a little above what we projected a couple months ago now. Page 174.
Mr. Conley has a question.
Oh, yeah.
Do you anticipate the private campground on 553 will have an impact on the tourist park revenue?
At this point, we don't. What we've found throughout the season is that we've been pretty well booked up for most of the meat of the summer, and so what we see happening there is an opportunity for visitors to have another spot, another option. When we are booked up, we turn a lot of people away. So especially for the weekends. And this year, of late, since the weather's warmed up, we've seen the weekdays all been full as well. So at this point, we're not anticipating. We'll see what happens, but at this point, I think it's a good thing. Page 174. I think of note here is 801 professional contractual. We have some normal things in here, and we have an abnormal thing. So leaf removal, about $5,000. Tree removal, $5,000. We try and keep up on both of those to keep the park in good shape and the campers safe. Patching road, we've started doing that the last couple of years. We have $2,000 recommended in there. As that road around the campground starts to deteriorate, we like to keep up on the holes. Now the abnormal one is fiber optic cable installation. So we were approached with the option this year as crews were coming through to be able to attach the office to that network, and that would drastically simplify operations, make our internet-based point of sale more reliable, and allow our staff to be on the same network that we are in the office, so we can share data more quickly. So that's a good opportunity, and so that is an increase in 801. Also of note, our power costs do continue to go up. So those are the highest power costs that we've seen in the campground, and part of that is that we do incur a demand cost, a demand charge every month of the year, because we do hit peak demand in July and August. So we do trigger that demand cost, and then we get charged 12 months a year for that. So in addition to the rate increase, that does affect 920. And then this year, of note, we anticipate to put about $81,000 into reserves. So the campground is doing well. Any questions on the campground?
Did we raise our tourist park fees to accommodate that electricity power increase?
Yeah, we did raise them last year. We did not raise them this year. And we raised all but the tent site fees, which typically don't use much electricity.
John, have you done obviously you have someplace. How does our rental rates compare with other tourist parks, municipal tourist parks? High, low?
Yeah, I think we're right in the ballpark. I think that for the experience that a camper gets when they come to Marquette, to be able to park their vehicle or set up their tent and then bike to the festivals or bike to the downtown on 18 miles of bike path, and have a reservoir right there. I think that we're on the higher end of the what we're providing, and I think we're right in the middle of the spectrum. There's a lot of places that are higher, and there are some that are lower. So we're right there.
I suspect you do an evaluation of, maybe not everyone, some people, just to say satisfaction survey. Also, do we ever ask why they're here?
Yeah, the office has a sort of a informal survey, and we do look at those every year, and they're usually in our annual report, which you'll see next month. But yeah, we do ask those questions. We do get a lot of for the festivals. We get a lot of for this race or that race, and we also get a lot of people that are just coming by, and a lot of satisfied customers. So.
Do you have any plans to expand that campground?
We do have a land use plan for the campground, and it does entail a little bit of expansion within the space, within the footprint that it has now. It would be an additional, I wanted to say it was like an additional 18 sites total. I'd have to verify that. But it was dependent upon the improvements that we're doing this year to the restrooms, so those add fixtures. And so the amount of sites you can have is based on the number of fixtures you have in the restroom. So once that's complete, then we can look at that.
You know, it was mentioned earlier that the other campground being built on 553, I think they're going to be a competition. And they'll probably, obviously you're going to have to watch your prices. I mean, you can be close, but you can't be too far. You know that.
Yep.
You will be watching that, I'm sure. Because they're close to a bike path too. But they're really not that close to town.
For anybody that's watching, go ahead and come out to Tourist Park. We don't have a highway running right by, so feel free to, come camp with us. All right, shameless plugs aside. Moving on to, if there's no further questions about the campground, we'll move on to page 191 for the marinas. So Presque Isle Marina, this is the fact sheet for the marina. Of note here, we're anticipating about $10,000 worth of fuel sales. And fuel sales are somewhat of a tricky thing to nail down. Sometimes we get more, sometimes we get less. But at this point, we're really not on par to hit that. And in fact, we were worried, that we were hoping that we used up all the fuel that we had in the tank once over for the year. So we've seen fuel sales drop and at the Presque Isle Marina. Launches are pretty steady. Transient slips are very low, hence the recommendation to not have transients at Presque Isle in the future with that fiscal policy we brought forward. If we get into page 192, revenues and expenditures for Presque Isle. Again, the 5% increase for the slip rates. Basically, the bottom line with our expenses and our revenues, we don't have any abnormal expenses, but we are looking to have to use about $7,000 worth of the fund balance this year to cover the cost. Now, I anticipate that to sort of right itself as we move into the fiscal policy that we looked at in October. And part of that is, if you recall, a lot of these operating expenses, namely power, are going to be reduced if we have a style of dock that doesn't need bubblers with the new build out. But as it stands now, needs quite a bit of maintenance, and so the expenses are just a little bit more than the revenue. But as we move into Cinder Pond, you'll see the marinas as a whole are on track for, moving in definitely the right direction. Any questions about Presque Isle?
Tell me again, fund balance, is that coming from the general fund?
No, that's coming from the Marina Fund.
The Marina Fund.
Yeah, we have a fund balance.
So you're not taking any money from Cinder Pond to put into Presque Isle, correct?
We Gary can answer this a little better. It's my understanding we could have it as a transfer from Cinder Pond, or we could call it Marina Fund Balance. Is that correct, Gary?
Yes. In the past, we did have to contribute money from the general fund to the marinas, and over the past couple years, between the two marinas, they become self-sufficient. Now, Presque Isle is a little bit not quite there yet. We are anticipating a little bit of a shortfall of close to $7,000 this year. We think there's sufficient current retained earnings to cover that. If not, there is money in the Cinder Pond Marina that could be transferred over, but we're still projecting there won't be any need to transfer general fund money into the marinas.
So tell me again, where's that 7,000 coming from?
Retained earnings, fund balance / retained earnings. Correct. Not a lot, but enough to cover $7,000.
That doesn't tell me a number.
Well, if you look at page 10, that shows the retained earnings for each fund. Page 10.
Is that the 201,000 unrestricted?
Correct. Yes. Yes, and that's between both marinas. There's 201,000 unrestricted. And and I know John hasn't presented it yet, but when you look at the Cinder Pond Marina, that's actually projecting the reverse situation where they'll collect more than what we intend to pay out. So the goal has been for quite a few years now is to get the two marinas. We'd like them to be individually self-sufficient, but at least if you combine the two together, they're self-sufficient, which is what we are seeing the past couple of years.
If you
Commissioner Frazier has a question.
With the possibility, I know it's not going to happen this year, but the possibility of fuel out of the island, possibly, when you redo the island, which is great, the marina needs to be updated just a little bit. But I know, from what I've been told, just the birdies in my ear are always boaters because I'm in the boating community, but they've always said there's a lot of people that put their boats in the water and they go to the fuel island, there's nowhere to pump fuel for them, so they can't get fuel. So it might be part of the fuel going down. Maybe something to look at is because, with the new docks being put in, they get a reduced dockage for smaller boats. They're going to make them trailer, which is fine, but they're going to have to fuel up at a gas station, or maybe they get the fuel from the city, but they can't get fuel there, so they're going to have to. The boats are heavier if they get fuel by trailer, and so just something to look at. You're going to move a light bulb, and then the other thing is mooring fuel for Cinder Pond. I mean, that's not Cinder Pond, but this is mooring fuel in general. I know somebody different than Cinder Pond helps out with that, and exchange to get a deal on dockage. We'll go into details on that, but something else. There's a couple people that work for the city that have boats. I'd rather see this, a city employee get the benefit than somebody else, but just be something to look at eventually. I know it's not going to happen this year, but maybe next year we could look at going, making just to pay them a regular hourly rate or something like that. Because, the Cinder Pond, you always talk about how much can we get for each marina, but we're losing, a person's in a 32-foot slip, we're losing $1,800 almost for a season. So that's money the Cinder Pond's losing just to help out with the mooring field, which is great. If the mooring field's great and helps out other boaters, and it's something we need, the city doesn't have a boat to do it with, so it's not something we could look at maybe doing next year. The other thing was, we've talked before about possibly we had a good spring, and all the boaters wanted to go in the water, but they couldn't because the marinas weren't open yet. And then when it's time the marina opened, the weather went south, and everybody had to get in the water because we had festivals starting. So I think they're like, okay, why do we have to go in the water now that the weather's gone south? And I know we'll look into that later. Just not going to happen this year, but maybe look into it next year. If they're seasonal person and they paid the rates and they're okay by the city, maybe look at doing it. But I know you've talked before, it's not our rules, it's state rules, but just something to look at. Maybe if we can look at during the winter when everybody's got the boats in storage. Maybe boat storage. Maybe we could add boat storage to Presque Isle Marina. Good job, John.
I just wanted to point out too, maybe it was previously pointed out, but the debt service in the Presque Isle, that was for the boat launch. Per the agreement that the City Commission approved in the past year, that debt service has been removed from the marina and it's now on the general fund. Much to my great gnashing of teeth.
If there's no further questions about Presque Isle, let's get the complete picture by looking at Cinder Pond here. Page 193. So if you recall, $10,000 in fuel sales. If you look at the fuel sales at Cinder Pond, we're estimating $50,000. And again, this was an estimate, a couple of months ago. I would not be at all surprised if we exceeded that by quite a bit. We've had lots of big boats come through, pulling upwards of 1,000 gallons of fuel this year. So I think that we might see that number exceeded. We've also, if you look at the transients, 150 transients through that marina. It's obviously the spot where the transients want to be. So also sort of justifies sort of that recommendation within the policy. I think that's all for page 193. Moving on to 194. We don't have any real expenses that are much different than the previous year. We've been putting dollars in to skin the docks, and we will take one of those ADA docks out this next year and reskin it just to keep those things up. For whatever reason, just a side note, the skins are the metal on the bottoms of the dock that hold the float in. And for whatever reason, the ADA docks being wider, that metal tends to deteriorate quicker than on the skinnier docks. So we had the dive team look at all of that, and it's the ADA docks that are in need. So we've been taking those out at the end of the season and reskinning them. We've also been replacing deck boards as necessary. Again, our goal for that marina is to, in its current state, get it through 2024. And to do that, we have to do some maintenance. So that's why in 801 you'll see some dollars for dock boards. And then we have some repairs that we have to do to the fuel system. Some of the electronics on that fuel system are getting kind of old. And just to keep up with the times and the standards, we need to put about $3,000 into that. Of note, with this budget, if you look at the Marina Reserve, this year we'll be putting $62,000 into almost $63,000 into the reserve. So that kind of shows how the policy is already kind of working. And again, the goal with this reserve would be to have enough funds to pay for the next generation of Cinder Pond with grant funding, and then hopefully be in the right place to not have to use grant funding when that facility expired 30 years later. So we're trying to set future generations, future commissions, future staff up to be in a good place. And it seems to be working. Any questions about the marina funds?
Commissioner Frazier.
No question, John. Just transients have been unbelievable this year. You said transients are up this year. Your fuel says I just saw a big boat filling up down there when I was coming in. So your fuel might be up a little bit after this big boat filled up. But I don't know who wants to take credit, Mike for hiring the marina manager, or Parks and Rec, or somebody wants to take credit for transit fees. They've been going up like crazy, because I was joking with the marina manager. I went to Munising and the marina was full. I saw that there wasn't many people that I talked to them a couple weeks later. I said 8 my words, because there was like at least 4 transients per day in that marina. It was just full of people. The thing is, just, he said some people don't want to pay the transit fee. They just want to anchor out there, which is fine. But maybe look at giving a discount rate for the wall. Maybe just, something to give the Cinder Pond a couple extra bucks. Maybe, I know you have a set transit fee by the stateways water people for our marina, but maybe, have an alternative rate for the wall. I mean, half rate or something like, whatever something to look at. I know the wall's just a spot on the wall. Maybe we could say, okay, if we're going to use power, it's X amount per feet. If you don't want to use power, you just want to dock at the wall, then it's fine. I mean, like our restaurants, I talked to some one person anchor out there. They like to just anchor out there and they row in at night and go enjoy a restaurant. So, I mean, Marina's been hopping this year and a lot of people, so good job.
I'll say one more thing. I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that we have a great staff, and I really want to thank our Parks and Rec coordinator for working hard to get the right people in the right position, and I think that our marina manager has done a heck of a job this year. We've noticed extremely clean bathrooms, great comments from the visiting and resident slip holders. So operations are going smooth this year, and we intend to keep it that way. And we'll give credit to Mike if he wants it. Sounds good. Moving on to Lakeview
Hey, John,
Arena.
just a question.
Yeah.
Following up on what Peter said, how come we don't allow boats to park at the bulkhead there? That's what he said. He said, why not just let them give them a one-nighter or something? We don't do that, but why don't we?
We actually do. So they can pay a transient fee and have an overnight there.
They can park
Yeah.
there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that what, overflow from the slips that are...
Yeah, we'll use it. Most people would prefer to pay a transient fee and be in the protection of the marina. But some boats are larger or we don't have a slip available, and so they'll use that.
Okay,
Some
so it
boats,
is available then?
Yeah, some boats want to be there, right there on the bulkhead. So.
Okay. Commissioner Conley.
I have a question for Gary. I'm not sure. There's 595 Cinder Pond expenses are listed twice here, and something seems to be coming down subtotal other. What I don't follow why there's two sets of expenses, and then the second paragraph, the expenses, 289,925, and then down below it's 271,620, but there's a negative 18,305. What is subtotal
Correct.
other?
Up in the first part, there is depreciation of $81,000.
Yep.
And then in the second part, we're backing out that depreciation because we aren't budgeting for depreciation. But then just up above that, we're showing the reserve fund. So that means the revenues have exceeded the anticipated expenses by almost $63,000. So in effect, it's getting close to covering the depreciation.
Oh, okay. All right. I get it now.
But by state law, you can't budget for depreciation like that. So that's why we acknowledge there's going to be an expense, but then we back it out budget-wise to show that we aren't covering depreciation.
I'll probably never understand that.
Yeah, it's just an accounting thing. We could have put it all up above, and there wouldn't have been a subtotal. In years past, it made more sense to break it out, but probably not so much anymore. But it was just really to take out things that didn't have a true budget impact cash-wise, is what we're trying to show originally. But bottom line is that total number, the 271,620, that's the target for the expenses. And so, the goal is, and that includes the reserve for almost $63,000.
Thank you. I think.
It's an accounting thing. It's a bean counter thing.
I call Gary about once a year to explain that to the advisory group. Well, if there's no further questions on marinas, we'll move on to Lakeview Arena, page 195. So this is sort of 195 and 196 is our fact sheet, and kind of outlines some of the metrics for the arena. You can see that the junior hockey revenue went down, is expected to go down slightly for 2017. They kind of pared back their program a little bit, and then they also rented a bit of ice here and there at the Berry, and they're not anticipating doing that for this next year, so it's good to know. But everything else is pretty much par for the course. I think the dry floor events, I guess of note, for the Russell and the Olson Arena, these would be things like roller derby, the Ore to Shore, the Marquette Marathon coming up is using the Olson, the circus, things of that nature. And it is our goal to increase those numbers. We see that as being one of our charges, to try and get as much of that summertime floor space rented. So look for some of that to come.
Yes, Commissioner Flores.
Question, John, actually two questions. One, when you look at dry floor events, are you including the Kiwanis Chicken Barbecue? Do they pay a fee for us?
Yes, they do.
And then I see you're looking at revenue from the Marquette Mutineers. Do you expect the Mutineers to be on the ice this year?
At this time, we're not expecting them to be on the ice.
Is there a possibility, maybe?
There's always a possibility, but at this time, there's still some outstanding revenue that they would have to cover, and then they'd have to.
They have a debt.
Yeah, they'd have to work a contract with us to add, all the dollars up front. So. Page 197. This is the revenues and expenses, and there's a few interesting things here. Those of you that have been on the commission for a while may remember a time when there was, upwards of $500,000 being transferred from the general fund into this fund. As I said in the beginning, our staff takes this really seriously, and we would throw a huge party if we could get this down to zero. I think it's a good news story that we're anticipating $213,000. That's the best that we've had in quite a long time. And I think there's opportunities for it to be even better if we can come up with some of those dry floor events. But this is what we're comfortable with at this point, projecting the revenues. Again, I would point you to 920 power. This facility is a power hog, and so all the more important that the Johnson Controls Initiative took a look at this and was part of this. So we're anticipating some good things, but we still have some of the highest power numbers that we've had in a long time. I think also as you look at this, 801 professional contractual. It's worth noting at this point that we have about $42,000 in there for a compressor rebuild and the standard Johnson Control contract for that facility. And that we may not have that $20,000 rebuild if everything pans out with Johnson Controls. So at the time we put the budget together, it was, not for sure that was going to move forward, and the timing is, not 100%. But with replacing the plant in the way that Johnson Controls is outlined, there will be no more yearly rebuilds of compressors at $20,000 a pop. So whether that affects this line item this year, we'll see if it comes together. It more than likely will not if their plan comes through the way that they want. So it's in there, but know that could be a good news story at the end of the year. Also of note, we have in 801 $10,000 for a facility evaluation study. This would be an engineered study The question comes up time and time again, how are we using the hockey field dollars? How are we spending that money? Is it just going, the public constantly asks, is it just going back into the general fund? The answer is no. We still have about $100,000 of the hockey field money. The Friends of Lakeview Arena have a little less than that, but around there, almost $200,000 to be able to spend on this facility. Now, like I said in the beginning, we have very responsible staff, and we look toward responsible policies. And our approach to this is we want to know where we can get the most bang for our buck. We could have easily, $150,000 is nothing for an arena. We could spend that in a heartbeat. However, the Johnson Controls initiative really outlined some of the facility efficiencies. So we're going to take that study, and then we're going to do an engineer study on other things that Johnson Controls wouldn't cover, such as bleachers, siding, windows, things of that nature, actual elements within that Johnson Controls as an energy audit wouldn't be looking at. So we're gonna take that study, and then we're gonna pare it down to what the highest priorities are and what we can best spend those dollars on. So that's what the plan is for those dollars, and that's why that you see that $10,000 for that study. Any questions about Lakeview?
Just a top figure, the fees, 2,300. Previously it was 10,000. What is that? Why is it low? What are those fees?
I think those are, I'd have to dig deeper into that one. Hold on a second. Let me have that right here. I'll have to get back with you on that one. We
Okay,
can
I just-
answer that, yeah.
Only because there's such a variance.
It's a good question.
A little further down, 676 reimbursements. What are reimbursements?
676.
676.
That's typically like if we get a dividend from our workers' comp carrier or property insurance carrier, that's usually the account number we use to put those monies in.
Oh,
So it's not money you normally
it can
anticipate
be all over
getting.
the place. then.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Yeah.
Commissioner Frazier has a question.
Glad to see you're working on Lakeview because, as you know, it's a power hungry building, and glad you're looking at every option to save it. I mean, it's a great building for the community to use. Glad you're looking at every way you can to save money in the building. If you want more events there, talk to your friends at Lakeview. Maybe have some additional parties in there or something like that. Raise more money for Lakeview. Have a dunk tank. The commissioners could sit in there. Maybe city manager could sit in there. Throw a ball at the dunk tank. You could dunk city manager or city commissioners or something like that. But going back to your Parks and Rec overall, I've had a question a couple times about the restrooms in Metza Park are, at like a Blake's Marquette Bed and Breakfast. They're perfect for that, but for a park that's used a lot, they're old stainless steel. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're just, I know they're fine for guys, but for women, a little scary. There's something to, you get not taking our general fund, but we look at a grant sometime we should have done it when we ripped down the DPW, we should use those, but replace them with something a little bit nicer. You have to redo the whole bathroom, just replace the fixtures maybe. I don't know how much it costs. You have to get a plumbing estimate. Just see what you have to budget for. Just get an idea. See how much it'd be a good idea just to happen. Because it's used so much. And then looking at that, maybe Matson Parker is being used so much now between arts and beers and everything else. Maybe look at like a little fee. Gary could come up with some little fee to say, like we came up when I was on Pipe Pack, we came up with the idea if we don't have beer in the pavilion, all the fees go towards repair of the pavilion. Maybe look at that like a small fee that comes out of that, whatever you charge to rent the park for the day. Tom's 4th of July committee or something could chuck in a couple bucks or whatever you want to. Just come up with some, talk to your people and just say, come up with Parks and Rec Board maybe. Some idea, come up with a fee to go back into to fix Madsen Park, to fix around the area or something like that. Just something to think about.
I guess, Commissioners, I'd take you back to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. A lot of these questions on future capital and where to go with some of these facilities will be definitely a part of that plan as we move forward and look at those. Any other questions on Lakeview?
Did you have anything final to say? That concludes the presentation. I want to thank John. He did a tremendous job in stepping up pretty much unexpectedly. He's done tremendous, but thank you, John. Just wanted to point out we're meeting again next Wednesday, and the topic will be community development, public works, and utilities, and that'll be 3 o'clock starting Wednesday.
Commissioner Conley had a question.
I have a question back on fees, page 32, and we had moved on, and something caught my eye. City park rental. Can somebody rent the Cove for a wedding on the island?
We do not rent any space for private events like that. So weddings, spaces like public green spaces are not rentable in that fashion. Now you can rent a brick and mortar facility. You can rent Lakeview for that. You can rent the pavilion for that. But the intent is, if we open that up, every green space that we all hold near and dear would be rented every single weekend for one of these events. So the policy is that we do not rent for private events and green spaces.
When people are setting up chairs there, do we stop them?
If they call our office, our standard response is that it's not a rentable facility, and if they ask if they can, hold a ceremony or do something like that, the answer is anybody can do, any of these types of things in a green space. Just you do not have any sort of exclusivity. You have to accept a Frisbee flying through your event. It can't have any major setups such as amplified sound and tents and things of that nature. So we do have a few impromptu weddings that happen throughout town that people walk up, say their vows, and walk off.
But I'm talking about setting up the chairs, back in the trailer into the Cove and setting
if
up
it gets up to
chairs.
that level, then that would be not something that we really allow.
Would the Park Patrol intervene?
They certainly could, and we can talk with the police chief's staff about that, and if it becomes a problem.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Are we done? We have one more public comment. Looks pretty sparse here, so we're going to close public comment. Comments from the commission, starting with Commissioner Cambenzi. Nothing. Frazier?
The only thing I wanted to add is, I will save it for a meeting on Monday, but the 911 people are looking at the smart 911 thing to help out the community. I'll give more information on our meeting on Monday, but it's a great system. I didn't know much about it. They did a presentation. It's great information. The county is looking at it. It's all paid for by the state. So give all everybody from Blake's department, the police department, to the fire department more information. If you call 911, give more information how to find you and how to go through with everything. So I'll get more into on Monday.
Mayor Pro Tem Baldini?
Pass.
Commissioner Conley?
Nothing.
Commissioner Plard?
I do want to take a moment and revisit Mayor Pro Tem Baldini's memo, and I think it's an important memo, something that we really need to take a look at. And I think a lot of businesses in the area take for granted what the city does and the expenses that the city puts out in these budgets, which, as Mayor Pro Tem Baldini mentioned, is the taxpayers' money. And I agree with John Swenson and Gary and City Manager Mike Angeli that when they say that the city staff do a great job of managing this money, but We are putting on a lot of events. The police department does a fabulous job making sure that the events go well. And I think that the businesses around the area and a lot of other entities around the area need to understand that. They need to know that. And I think that should be part of this. And I'm willing to work with Mayor Pro Tem Baldini on this because I think they do take it for granted. And they make a lot of money on the things that the city provides. And I'm not opposed to that, not at all. But sometimes there's a little bit of a reluctance to bring some money back, for example, to the 4th of July committee or the fireworks committee or other areas when they have the money and they should be bringing some of that money back to the city for the expenses that the city puts out. Whether that happens with these statistics or not, I don't know, but it's something that people need to understand. This is the city really, really investing in the local community. And I think part of that is some of the budget increases, and they're actually very small increases I've seen so far. But some of that is because of that, and that's what we do. We're trying to support the economy of the area, and I think we're doing a fine job of it. So I'd like to see us fairly soon in the future take a hold of this and find a way to make this work and find a way to find these statistics. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Baldini as well when he says inaccurate information is better than no information at all. I'm sure we're not going to be able to pinpoint exactly how many people came up for the No Cayman On or came up for the Food Fest, the 4th of July Food Fest, but we can get a pretty darn good idea. And I'd love to see numbers on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Reynolds.
Nothing.
I'm just glad you have Lakeview under control. That's always good to see. No, seriously, it's going down, so. City Manager, anything? We are adjourned.